We are so happy to have our second panelist here, Jessica Rose. I have been working with Jessica for years.
Yeah.
We've been in the same grad program since I started my graduate program. So we worked together a long time. She's a PhD candidate at Georgia State University. As a rhetorician, she's interested in feminist rhetorics, multimodal rhetorics, and archives. Archival methods and oral histories feature prominently in her scholarship and her teaching. Her publications include her thesis, The Rhetoric of the iPhone, a cultural gateway of our transforming digital paradigm, and her most recent publication, the co-authored chapter, Archiving Our Own Historical Moments, Learning from Disrupted Public Memory, from the edited collection, 19th Century American Activist Rhetorics. So thank you, Jessica, for joining us. She is going to talk to us about best practices for capturing interviews and using technology. So Jessica, take it away. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And thank you for that introduction. I realize that's a mouthful. So hi, I'm Jessica, and I'm excited to be here today talking with you guys about technology. A lot of times when we think about technologies as non-tech people, it can cause a little anxiety, but I have recorded several oral histories in a couple of different settings with different kinds of technology and help behind me. And I can tell you that at the end of my first one, I felt nothing but relief. It was like, oh, that wasn't anything at all. So in order to help you guys reframe and think about how you're going to engage with your interviewee and get their stories told, I thought I'd put a little presentation together just to show you some of the things that I know I had to think about and maybe forgot to think about, and then was like, okay, let's stop and think about that. So you're going to learn from my experiences. So let me take a minute, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys. Let's see here. Screen. Sorry. Lady talking about tech. Okay. So we want to talk today about how to record and share your interviews and your oral histories. And you can see here in this picture, I chose this picture because I thought it was great that they were just using a standard kind of digital camera that you might find, you know, in your closet. And that is something that you can do. And if you have a handbook, you can look through it. But interviewing is just the easiest part of the interviewing actually might be the technology. So I'm going to dispel the myths. We're going to look at, we're going to take stock and look at what we need to consider before our interview. We're going to look at equipment and the idea of selecting certain, selecting things based on what you have around. We're going to look at getting the best look and sound so you can feel like you've given your best to your interviewee. We'll also talk about interviewing at a distance, which is a big concern because we are still distancing during the pandemic. And then we're going to wrap up a little bit. So the first thing I want to say is you can do this, right? This does not require a lot of skill. You don't need a special degree. You don't need fancy equipment. All it really requires is patience and organization and preparation. So first, we want to take stock of what we have on hand, right? Both physically and within ourselves. So how comfortable are you with technology? If you're not super comfortable, but maybe you have a phone or a pad, you're good to go. If you are really skilled with technology, you may not even need to listen to me and you might know more. And that's okay too. I think the bottom line is you want to kind of bring out the best of your interview and get it recorded nicely. So make a list of the kinds of devices you own that could be recording devices, because you're still kind of setting up how and where you're going to do your recording. So think about what you might use initially, and then if something goes wrong, what you might have as a backup. You always want a plan B. Will you be conducting your interview in person or from afar? If you're conducting your interview in person, you are going to be controlling most of the stuff. But if you're interviewing from afar, say if we were doing it like on a Zoom meeting or a Skype call, then you're going to want to have some conversations with your interviewee, and you guys kind of, make a plan together. What will work best on their end and on your end? How can you kind of collaborate? And finally, does your interviewee have any special communication considerations or needs? Maybe they're hard of hearing. Maybe they need somebody to interpret. There might be a language barrier. You want to know those things up front. If you need a third person in the room, you want to go ahead and schedule that, because that will help make that communication easier. And it does translate on technology, which is why I bring it up. Not necessarily a technology concern, but something that I know I've had to consider in the past. I did a long distance interview with someone who needed an interpreter, and I had to make sure that all three of us had that information and had the right stuff to make that happen. So just make a list of the things you're going to need and the circumstances in which your interview is happening. Okay. All right. So let's talk about equipment. I'm going to maybe make you feel more relieved that you don't need a lot of fancy equipment. Several interviews I've done in the past have required maybe renting a microphone, but you don't have to do that, right? We'll talk about that in just a second. But the first thing you want to consider is, are you going to be video recording your interview, or are you just going to be sound recording your interview? If you're going to be video recording, and I'm thinking that many of you will want to, then either a laptop or desktop or your mobile device will suit you really well. Most laptops and desktops have built-in cameras and recording software. It's part of the basic setup, and it has been for a really long time. So unless you have a computer that is more than 10 years old, this shouldn't be an issue for you. But you will want to go in and you'll want to look and explore and find out where that stuff is. The recording software is connected with your camera. So if you just go in and click on camera, you can usually find a couple of different options. But your PC, if you're on a PC, then that will be a camera application. But in Macs and Apples, you might look for iMovie, which is a special kind of thing that they have for their fancier computers. If you're working on a mobile device, such as a phone, right, or a pad, I have one around here, my handy pad. These are great, and these have even more options, because the technology and the people that are building these mobile technologies are really focusing on all the extra things that it can do, right? So we benefit from that because we have lots of different apps that you can download, and really high quality cameras in most phones and pads that are 5 years or newer. So another benefit of this is that they're more flexible, right? If you are working in a small space, or maybe you're outside and on the go, or you don't have a lot of tabletop area, these can be really excellent options. Now, you will need to consider accessories with these. Kind of think about when people walk around and they have their little selfie stick and they're taking pictures, right? They have something so they can get further away and closer up. There are tabletop versions of that. If you don't have one and you don't want to purchase one, maybe check in with some of your family members and see if they have any accessories for their mobile devices that they might want to lend you. So, it might take a minute, but these are really great options. They are also great because if you need to be hands-free. So let's talk about sound. If you are only recording and your voice, and you're not going to be recording any video, then a mobile device is likely preferable. You can set it on a table. You can put it closer to the person you're speaking with so that they can really capture their voices. And it's immediate, right? You can save it and you can send it to yourself. You can also do it though on a laptop or a desktop. When I was talking about a microphone, that was when I had to borrow a microphone. There are small microphones that you can borrow oftentimes from libraries. So you might want to check and see if one of the libraries around Newnan-Coweta will have maybe some equipment that they can lend you. It's called a snowball mic. It's pretty common, but it just plugs right into your computer and it sits in front of the interviewee and it picks up more sound and a finer quality of sound. But you don't have to have it. We right here are having a meeting. You can hear me fine on my, on just the built-in mic, right? So you want to, again, think about whether or not you'll need it based on what you're doing, who you're speaking with, and where you'll be. That's it. You don't need a fancy camera. You're not a filmmaker. You don't need special training. There is the option to use a digital camera. Some digital cameras do have video functions and have for a very long time, 20 years. If you have a digital camera and you're comfortable with it, I might even consider that because you can put it on a stand. You can, place it anywhere in the room. And again, you have more mobility than say with a laptop. So let's talk about getting the best look and sound. You're not in a recording studio, but we do want to consider a few things. So here's number one. And I want to think about first where you are and then who you're speaking with, okay? So the first thing is, where are you recording? Are you recording in someone's home? Are you recording outside? Is there an echo, right? Or really high ceilings? What about a noisy fan, or the air conditioning or the heater might be loud? These are things that are important to think about because they can creep in on your sound and then they can make the voice of your interviewee muffled. And you want to clear away as much what we call static between their story and your surrounding area. Likewise, is there going to be some construction? Is there a playground nearby? If you think there's going to be a good bit of noise, you might want to find a different location. I know that when I lived in Newnan, and I did live in Newnan, I lived near a church, and on Sundays, they woke me up pretty early in the morning, getting ready with the bells. And I know that if I were recording, I would be able to hear that if that were going on behind me. It's lovely. It's a lovely sound, but it may not be something that you want to put into your interview. So let's think about location. The next thing to think about is your lighting. How is the lighting? Natural light is really good in the first half of the day because it's kind of head on, right? But, and it can help you do most of the lighting work, but maybe you're going to be someplace that doesn't have a lot of natural light or needs a lot of artificial light. We will talk about options for that in just a minute, because lighting will be crucial in capturing the expression and the face of your interviewee. Okay, so the next thing I want you to do is to prep your interviewee. Remind them that they will want to project and enunciate in order to capture the story on the recording. You can model your pace and your volume, and I would recommend you guys do a quick 30-second test to make sure that all of your equipment is functional the day of. So if you've ever heard somebody do a mic check or seen somebody testing out sound equipment, you might hear testing, 1, 2, 3, right? That kind of thing. Go ahead and have them do that just so that you know ahead of time that you're good to go. If you are video recording, there are a few things to consider. You will want to ask your interviewee to wear minimal patterns. Most film is recorded kind of in HD right now. And so a lot of heavy pattern can actually distort on the screen, and it's distracting. So see, I have a shirt on that has just a little bit of polka dot. That's fine, but I wouldn't want paisley, right? Or tie-dye or anything really, really vivid. You want it to be sort of muted because you want them to be the focus. If you're recording from a distance, you want to remind your interviewee to follow the same lighting and location suggestions, right? Make sure that they can hear themselves and there's not a lot of background noise, no barking dogs, that their lighting is good. And we're going to talk about lighting more specifically. So let's talk about your camera. You can see here, right here, you can see me straight on, but my camera is actually a little bit above me. Most of the time people will sit their laptop on the tabletop. And if you can look, I'm going to show you. Look how far down my tabletop is, right? It's not, my camera is not on my tabletop. It's actually elevated above. This gives a flattering face, but it also minimizes the shadow and exposes the largest area of the face so that if somebody needs to read lips, that is also helpful, right? Good lighting is helpful all the way around. You want to keep your light natural, but you want to make sure it's directed at your interviewee. So you want the light to come from above or behind your camera and not behind your interviewee. Lighting from behind causes shadow and so it obscures the face. I'm sitting here in my dining room, which has 3 huge windows. So I'm pretty lucky. I've got a lot of natural light and I don't have to turn anything else on. But you want to make allowances. Consider again what time of day and where you are. All right. So here's just some examples of the way this lighting might work. So you can see number 1, where he's got it's softer lighting. Number 2, there's shadow coming in from this side and the lighting's pretty dim. Number 5, it's almost like a flashlight effect. You can see what happens when we get outside if we don't have lighting in front of the face. So these are kind of the tricks of the pros, but they're really easy to affect. You just use an extra lamp, make sure your chair is sitting their chair is sitting in the right place. You want to just think about those considerations. And again, you can do a test and you can look through the camera and make sure, okay, it looks great, right? Or you might have to move them about a little bit. So let's talk about interviewing from a distance. If your interviewee cannot be in the same room with you, either because they need to distance or they live far away, then you're going to be interviewing in the manner that we're kind of having the seminar now. Luckily, there are a few platforms that help make this easy. And this is where a lot of people have anxiety with technology. But I promise you, it just takes practice and preparation. They're all very easy. They're all very user-friendly. They want you to use their platforms. So they're not going to make it very difficult. Okay. So Zoom, you clearly know about because you're on Zoom today, but let's talk about Zoom so you know why it does what it does and kind of the little tricks that it has. Zoom is a conferencing platform. So it was really built for business, but obviously it's gained popularity and its audience has broadened with the pandemic. More people than ever are using Zoom in classrooms and as an alternate to FaceTime or Skype. It may be that you've already used Zoom other than today. It has a lot of account options, including a free option and a cost option. You can record with either. But one of the limitations is that if you have a free account, it will only allow you to record for 40 minutes. So you're going to have to carefully plan your interview or break it up into sections. So do a 40-minute interview and then do another 40-minute interview. That is an unfortunate drawback, but you might also want to check and see if a friend or a family member has a pay Zoom account if you don't, and they may allow you to use that to complete your interview. If you look on on our screen, on the seminar screen, you don't have the same kind of options that you might have if you were the person hosting, but down at the bottom of the screen, what you will notice is an option to record. If you're going to use Zoom and record, you will hover over the record button and you will click on record to the computer. It has 2 options, to record to the cloud and record to the computer. Recording to the computer is really helpful because it allows you to control exactly where your stuff is going and download it and share it with the Y and with Emily. So record from your computer if at all costs. Skype. We're going to move on to Skype. Skype's another platform that's used for making video calls. It's more flexible. It's more, it's less business-y and just more family-oriented. You can still record with Skype. You have to request permission with the other person on the other end of the line. But it's really easy, and it downloads in much the same manner. So I have given you a link, and I'm going to share with Emily a resource page that she can give you guys that has a couple of different links on it. But this Skype's great because they have a huge FAQ section, so you can ask any question you want, and it likely has an answer. So I've given you the link for this FAQ. All right, those are the two I would recommend. There are others. There's FaceTime, and I have had mixed success with FaceTime. And if you don't have an Apple, then FaceTime is of no use to you. There's also Google Meet, but I think you can only record if you have a business version. So these are the two I'm going to recommend most strongly. So here are the lighting things. Just a reminder, recommend front and side lighting, a nice clean background. One of the things that many people often forget is, like, they've got their laundry in the background, or they've done something else. These are considerations you want to kind of pass along. Just make sure it's a nice clean background, minimal distraction. All right, so now we're going to wrap up. First, I want you to remember, don't forget to stop recording verbally before you close. This is something that I had to learn. I just pressed the stop recording button. I didn't say thank you. I didn't, say signing off or anything like that. It's not a technological issue, but it is one that you have to consider when you're recording. So you just give it a little wrap up before you hit the close button, okay? Check your recording just to make sure everything looks good. 99.9% of the time, if you've prepared, everything will look great. You're going to save your files, and this is something I confirmed with Emily, with your last name, your interviewee's last name, first name, and then oral history. This will help them to put them, to store them and make them available for the public so that people can just easily find them based on the last name. So if you were interviewing me, you would save my interview as Rose Jessica Oral History. And then Emily is going to share a Dropbox link. You're going to want to share your file in the cloud. You will not be able to send it via email, most likely, because there are restrictions on most of our email accounts on how big a file can be. So video files, sound files, media files that are larger need to be shared in a shared space. So she will share that with you, and then you guys can upload them there. So that, I believe, is what I got. I want you to test drive your unfamiliar platforms or technology, but remember, we have so much available to us. We're really lucky that we can do this in this particular moment. The more you practice, the easier you will feel the easier it will feel, and the better you'll feel about what you're able to do. And then just have fun. Don't let the tech get in your way. So that's it for me, but I'm free and open to questions if anybody has any, especially if you have specific questions about specific technologies or platforms. I just know I had a lot to go through, so I wanted to get it all in. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Okay, so let's see. Thomas, speak about the transcription process of oral videos. Do you do them? How soon after the interview? So that's a good question. I think transcription might be a better question for Emily, just because some people, some companies and some places like to do their own transcription. I'm sorry, y'all, I had a little. Some people like to do their own transcription. So what they'll do is they'll get in all the files and they'll send it to a transcription service. There are some technologies that will allow you to do transcription. Zoom, I believe, has a transcriber where you can request the transcription. But I don't know, Emily, are you guys going to have one person do transcribing?
For this project, we don't have anyone assigned to transcription yet.
Yeah.
If you want to take the time to transcribe, I would say give us the file first, so that we have the file, because for those who have not transcribed something before, um, you may think that this is going to be very easy to do. And if you have an hour and a half oral history, it's going to take a really long time to transcribe it. So don't feel like you have to do that. We can take the interviews, and researchers can still use it, and they will. As someone who is a researcher, I would sit there and just listen to it for hours and hours until I get what I need. So we can have the oral histories without the transcription. If that's something you want to volunteer to do at a later time, we will take that volunteer work. But it's not something that has to happen immediately after the interview. You can house oral collections for a while without the transcriptions. Of course, that's ideal, but not necessary. And what technology? I haven't really used any technology, but I've kind of done short interviews, so it's just been me kind of listening and transcribing. Jessica, have you used any?
I have actually, and I've done it both with the university, and I have done transcribing, and I've used technologies for transcribing. And here's what I can say about all of these things. There are transcribing services that you can pay for, and they will transcribe anything. And what that will, it will be a process of kind of a digital transcription, where there is a computer program that picks up the sound and transcribes it into text. And then you'll still need to go back and check that text and make sure that, they didn't say pickles and bananas when they were supposed to say, something else. And that's just a function of that's just a restriction of the technology. Zoom offers transcription, but I think it's only transcription for their cloud based recordings. So that will be something that you'll want to consider. It is easier to do a recording on your computer because you control it and you can send that file immediately. If you want to record on the cloud, you're going to have to pull it down. You're going to have to reformat it and follow those rules and directions. And those are going to be specific depending on the recording, etc. So I can't give you a blanket answer on that. But the benefit of that would be that you could have that kind of digital transcription service occur with your text, and then you'll want to again check it and make sure. But Emily is correct that transcription is exhausting. I transcribed 15 hours of interviews with some professors once, and it took me 2 months to do, and that was working at a breakneck speed. So that's why I always ask, my interviewee, hey, we'll get a transcription at some point, but if you could enunciate, just, make sure that everybody can, knows exactly what you're saying. It helps account for some of those errors.
Okay. Well, I don't see any other questions coming up, and we want to get to the next workshop, but thank you so much, Jessica. That was helpful. And I saw people noting that they feel already a lot better about using technology.
Good.
So you have put people at ease, which is exactly what we wanted, which was great. Yes, so you can do this. You can use the technology and capture oral histories, which is what we wanted you to realize that.
Absolutely. It's just like videotaping your kid walking for the first time or anything else. It really is. Yes. I'm going to share this this PowerPoint with you, and then I'll share that document with you. And then if you want to pass it along to your registrants, then great.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Jessica. Thank you for joining us.
You're so welcome.
We'll send out the contact information and the resource page and everything to everyone who joined. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. Thanks. Have a good day.